Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
So now I want to move us into our TV review of the week. We have season 2 of DC's Peacemaker. So this is the first season of Peacemaker that's technically fully canon in the new DCU. And I say fully canon because, there's been some loose speculation on what the first season of Peacemaker was going to mean, since it's really the main character that's really rolled over from the previous iteration of the DCU into the new James Gunn DC universe. Well, they get that right out of the gate, retconning some of the stuff that happened because, notoriously, spoiler if you haven't seen season 1, it ends with Peacemaker interacting with the Justice League, specifically Henry Cavill and, Gal Gadot and
Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Those jokes.
Those jokes, which will go down in infamy. But they kind of retcon it out of the gate with the new Superman and the Justice Gang. So if you've seen, the new Superman film, those characters appear in it, and they kind of retcon it by having it retold as him interacting with them instead. But this really kicks off a second season here of Peacemaker where you get kind of the fallout from that, where Peacemaker's really just trying to make a difference in the world. That's kind of been his big spiel, and it kind of jumps off with him trying to join the Justice Gang, essentially, where he goes and does this interview, and as predictably as it can in a comedy action, series, goes absolutely horribly. And, it kind of sets off a chain of events where Peacemaker, who's just trying to find his way as a hero in the world, and, he figures, I'm getting no respect here. Maybe it's time for me to look for respect elsewhere.
Yeah, so needless to say, we're going to have plenty of spoilers with this going over the whole season 2. There's a lot of stuff that happens that we have to talk about, so if you don't want to be spoiled by it, as always, go to our recap at the end. But this season was quite a bit different than I was expecting because, as you mentioned, we came in that Peacemaker season 1 was all part of the old DCEU, and that they were going to roll it into the DCEU, and we were all curious how exactly they were going to do that. And we kind of got word and knew that it was going to kind of mess with the interdimensional doors and stuff like that, and we kind of got that in Superman as well. So I came into it thinking, all right, he's just going to go into an alternate universe, and that's going to be the new DCU, and he'll just stay in there, and that'll be it. But no, they did the retcon and made that universe that we were already in be a part of the DCU or DCEU. So that was a little bit like you had kind of an easy out that you could have just made it a dimensional door that he went through and stayed and didn't come back. But I mean, they played with that well. There's a lot more dramatics with this season because, Chris Smith, Peacemaker, he's kind of struggling with his life. Like he's still struggling with that he killed Rick Flag Jr. and that his dad is still after him of wanting to make him pay for, killing his son and everything. But he doesn't know where he fits in. Like he's kind of emotional about, well, I was just killing people to kill people no matter what. I didn't care how many people I killed. And now he's kind of dealing with that fallout of it, that he's actually doesn't want to be that kind of Peacemaker who just kills to kill. And he's trying to, because we actually get, I think, more plain clothes Chris than we get Peacemaker in this series and stuff, because he's trying to deal with that. And we also get that a little bit of love story was building between him and Harcourt, but we get a lot of drama and stuff behind that. But, most of the season revolves around that. We knew that his dad had this dimensional door, and that's where all the Peacemaker helmets and other stuff was kept. And, we got that close to the end of season 1. But that dimensional door plays a huge part in this series because it leads to so many different worlds and everything else, but it also leads to an alternate universe where his dad is still alive and his brother is still alive as a grown man, played by, David Denham, who for most people will remember him as Roy from The Office, gets to play his brother because if you remember in season 1, his brother was killed as a child.
Yep.
So this is the first time we get to see the adult brother, and it really affects, Chris on how he's treated and feels in his actual universe and how he feels and treated and what he has available in this new universe.
What I think they do such a brilliant job of in this season is kind of doing the long story with that alternate dimension that he kind of wants to stay in, right? So he pretty much gets out of, the pickle that he's in where he's in his normal universe. He's got Rick Flag Sr. coming after him heavy. Like that's the emphasis of this season is Rick Flag is hell bent on getting revenge on Peacemaker, bringing him in, just basically trying to kill him this entire season. And, now you've got Rick Flag Sr. is the head of Argus. It's not Amanda Waller running the show. It is Rick Flag is fully in charge of Argus now, and he's using the full resources of his power as the leader of Argus to kind of apprehend Peacemaker by any means here. But it's still funny because he's trying to do that, but he's also still trying to do it legally.
It's almost like he's trying to be a good guy, but he's not.
Right, and he's walking a really fine line as Rick Flag in this, and Frank Grillo is just awesome. I love Frank Grillo as an actor, and he's so good as Rick Flag in this, but you get him trying to stop Peacemaker by any means, but he kind of abandons his team to go into this alternate dimension where you see early on where he's just accepted and loved because Peacemaker is this great hero in the universe that he goes in. And probably the heaviest spoiler we can give here is there's a fight very early on with his doppelganger in that dimension where he kills that Chris so he can go and assume the role of Chris there, and he tries to blend in, and you see how he's different personality-wise from the other Chris, and they kind of play with that throughout the season. But him just basically saying, hey, I'm loved here, my brother's here, my dad's alive here, and I'm a beloved hero here. I'm going to stay here. And I love the story that they tell about what that dimension really is throughout that season.
God wild.
Because it takes a very, very dark, heavy turn later in the season, by the end of the season, where you find out exactly what kind of universe that is and what is happening. Because you see Chris dealing with things very much in his own personal bubble in a vacuum while not seeing the overall bigger picture, which kind of goes to talk about how, Chris is as a character, very oblivious to a lot of things in the real world. That's heavy on point here in season 2.
There's a big joke about there's a mural that basically paints a picture of exactly what this world is, but they make fun of it like, how did I never see that or notice that before? Like, it's very obvious if you see that what type of world this is. But yeah, that was a moment when it happened, because we won't spoil exactly what happened there, but you have a character who is out and you see people reacting to this character and it starts going really negatively and you're like, that's what's wrong with this world. But that joke, that's what had me laughing, that joke of how, because you do get some of the other characters who were trying to bring Chris back. Like he's kind of making ultimatums with everybody, especially with Hardcore, like, did that night on the boat mean anything to you? And she says no, because she's dealing with her own stuff. She's used to being a loner. She she's been blacklisted from any jobs, and that's all she knows is to be a spy and be this agent and stuff. And she's having a really hard time by picking bar fights and doing a lot of stuff, and she's never been one to kind of deal with her emotions and everything else. So she straight up tells him no. So he just wants to leave because the Hardcore in the alternate universe, they were in love. And they had a relationship together, and he kind of talked to her, and there was a thing that, well, if you could be this type of guy, then we could give it another try. So he's kind of going back and forth like, all right, I need to know from you, Hardcore, I need to know from everybody else, is this anything going to happen here, or I'm just going to go live in that, alternate reality. And you do get kind of mingling back and forth of them trying to come after him, but it does get some emotional weight behind the character, because he's dealing with, he hates his own reality, almost like Good Fortune. You're dealing with Arj, like, not liking his own life, so he wants to live this other life, and it's very similar with Peacemaker. It's kind of where after watching Good Fortune and seeing the finale, it's like, oh, there's a lot of parallels between this, because Chris is very, I don't want to live in this world anymore. Everything is dark. I'm not accepted anywhere. Yeah. And then he has to finally realize what he did have and everything in that. But it was a fun season overall. It was kind of weird because we did get more emotion and stuff with it, but it did leave a little controversy with the finale, because a lot of people, which I've seen, and I've got my own feelings on as well, where the finale left everything, because James Gunn said right now there are no plans for a Peacemaker season 3.
Yeah.
His story, whatever happens with him and these characters, we'll explore in some other DCU properties. But right now, this is it for Peacemaker.
Which is crazy where they leave it off, right? And it's got a lot of people bummed out about it because it's very much a cliffhanger-ish finale that at this point, knowing that they may not go back and explore it fully is a little bit of a cop-out in my opinion, because you leave something very open-ended, but they do introduce two really cool things that are potentially, according to James Gunn, going to play bigger roles in the DCEU moving forward. And we'll get to those in a minute, but I wanted to shine a little bit of a bright light on the band that's featured heavily in this season is a local band to Cincinnati, a band called Foxy Shazam, that they go by a different name in the show that they use for them, that do like most of the music, until we get Foxy Shazam actually performing in the finale in that final musical scene that they do. Phenomenal band, amazing band. And, you know, they have even the theme song for season 2 with a brand new dance number. It's not the same up-tempo, intense, like hard rock, like epic season 1 intro, and a lot of people have strong opinions about how the season 2 intro's different from that, and it's maybe not as good or as catchy as the other one, but still a good song, great band that does get featured in the heavy end. And I do want to give, you know, our local band Foxy Shazam a little bit of love there, which so awesome that James Gunn knows who they are and brought them in, and apparently he's a fan of theirs too. So that was really cool to see them get a spotlight like this, and it was just it made me proud as a guy who's followed that band's career for a long time, seen them when they were playing shows in front of like 10 to 15 people, like seeing them really like blow up and be used in a property like this is really cool.
And the other side of the spectrum, you get a band, Nelson, that maybe not everybody knows who they are, making a cameo appearance in there as well, because, you know, that boat ride, or time on the boat that Chris is referencing to Harcourt is these band cruises and stuff that he ends up taking her on. And it plays a big part of their story in two different ways, which was really well done. And if you look closely in one of those scenes, that James Gunn has a cameo in the back of the crowd and stuff. So he did throw himself in there, but it's not, because there's a lot of people who just want to hate on James Gunn, especially as Superman, because everything he posted had him in it for Superman. Like, he wrote, he directed it. He's the head of DC. Like, if he's going to put himself into some stuff, he can. It wasn't egregious that he's just like putting the camera in his face big, and you have to look for him to see him. Like, it's not something in this one that he's like forcing himself to stand out in. But yeah, it was a really interesting season because it tried to get a little more hard into it. Like, you had, you know, Danielle Brooks, still fantastic. I've loved her ever since Orange is the New Black and everything. It's being Chris's best friend and trying to be the one to talk sense into him, and you get some kind of emotional, heartfelt stuff between them, but also some silly stuff, because she's trying to start her own security business and she's getting her advertisements out in different magazines, but there's one person who calls her to set up a job, but he thinks it's for something else, and that's just kind of a hysterical scene with her and Vigilante sitting on a porch, and he's listening to her phone call, and he's like, oh yeah, it sounds like he's asking for this, and she's like, oh no.
It's so funny.
Like, there's some really fun bits into it, but it does try to add a little more drama, and to even get a Sad Eagly and other stuff in there, and you get Michael Rooker, who's appeared in pretty much everything James Gunn has done. He's back yet again, you know, trying to track down Eagly and take it out on this you know, weird Native American guy who's just kind of all over the place, and it's really funny that he thinks he's taken out Eagly, but then he gets overran by all the different eagles and stuff. And
it's fun.
There's some fun, like, kind of different cameos, because we also got at least one character that we didn't expect we were going to see, especially so soon after, you know, the DCEU kind of rebooting. And a big spoiler on it, we get Lex showing up. We get Nicholas Hoult as Lex, shows up in here. We know that they were filming at the same time, so Superman and Peacemaker were at the same sound stages and studios and filming at the same time, and we wondered if we were going to get a Superman cameo and everything else, but we did get a Lex, which plays a pretty big importance and can be setting up for something pretty big in the future, because, you know, with the Superman movie, they were dealing with their own interdimensional portals, but they had a hard time keeping them open and doing that. But now they have these basic Monsters Inc. type of doorways that they can go and visit all these alternate realities. And it's kind of, I think, a good time to move into that finale and what it kind of did with it, because, we're left at a point where Chris is trying to really make his life for himself in that new reality, and he does finally figure out what is wrong with this reality. But we get scenes with his dad and his brother that really shock and change him, and he has a breakdown, and he just doesn't know what to do with himself. He'd just rather put himself in prison. And so, he kind of turns himself in, while the rest of the group is kind of taken over by Argus, and they're having to help them. And they're going through all these interdimensional doorways, trying to find something. You don't know right away what they're trying to find, but you get some wild worlds where there's gigantic skull creatures where they're screaming and yelling, and they're like, nope, not going to check out that world. Or they find one that kind of looks like Willy Wonka, but then these little alien creatures come out and just devastate and overrun them. And it's kind of a fun play with that. They don't spend a whole lot of time with it, but which is disappointing in a way, that you thought that maybe there'd be more importance to these other, because throughout the whole series, there's this alien creature who comes in to dispose of bodies of these alien rats. And there's a little bit back and forth, like Chris is yelling at him and telling him off, and others are trying to say hi to him, and it's just an alien creature. But
it's a funny gag.
We never visit that world.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we would, but we do find out in the end what exactly they were trying to do with those doors.
Yeah, you get this set up. So there's two major things coming out of this season that kind of frustrates people who were hoping for a little bit of a follow-up for season 3, of a potential season 3 for Peacemaker. But you get the full circle with Chris, who eventually kind of snaps out of it, and he's ready to kind of do the right thing and go and be the leader, and realizes that he kind of is the glue that holds that group together, and they come up and they form this group that's called Checkmate, which is, if you're a fan of the DC comics and know what it is, Checkmate is kind of like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. of the MCU. It's kind of like an equivalent of that. It's called Checkmate, where it's like this private organization that aims to do good in the world and things like that. It's kind of like a S.H.I.E.L.D.-esque, not quite S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, trying to be an anti-Argus in this world.
Yeah, it's just kind of trying to be the antithesis of that, and they form that group, but it ends with Chris being captured and being sent through a door into this world, and you're like, what happens? He gets left, and that world turns out to be what's known as Salvation in the DC comics, which DC is a meta-human planet that can sustain meta-human life, but they find a way that can really seal it off from the rest of the world, and that's going to play a huge, crucial role in DC moving forward, because James Gunn has come out and said that it's going to play a big role in Man of Tomorrow, which is going to be the next Superman film, and that's going to be, the whole Lex versus Superman thing again. What's Lex's involvement with Salvation? He's the one that gave Rick Flag the idea to go looking there. And, that sets up the whole thing where Chris gets kind of abandoned in Salvation. He's isolated from the group, and you don't know, is there going to be a rescue mission to go save Chris? Do they know what happened? That's kind of the ambiguity of the finale, where we just don't know what's going to happen moving forward, because he gets taken and he gets dropped off on this planet and left there. And you're like, what is going to happen? What else is on that planet? Because you hear these ominous noises in the background. Like, what is going on in this planet that they dropped him off in, that these supposed metahumans are going to be dropped off there, and what is the plan for that planet? And it's got a lot of implications moving for DC going forward, but it really leaves this unknown for Peacemaker and what the future of that character is going to be, and this group, because like you said, they set up this group called Checkmate. Are they going to be more involved in other DC properties? Are they going to play more roles there, like that organization helping in other cases? Like, how is it all going to tie together? There's so many questions we have to have answered now.
Yeah, and we got Flag kind of going full villain in the final episode, because as they're going through the doors and people are dying, he's seen laughing and cheering with the rest of his coast. He's got kind of part of Lex's group with him, handling these doors and stuff. So you get a few more other side characters that show up from Superman. But yeah, his plan is to rid the Earth of metahumans, and he wants to put them on Salvation on their own, and he doesn't care about it. like it's a prison, but he doesn't care about having them locked up. As soon as they dump him off in that world, they close the door, they move the door, and they can never get back. Like he just wants to get rid of metahumans, and he's using Chris as the kind of bait or just a experiment to see exactly what this world is like. So we don't know kind of what this world is going to be, what it's going to introduce. Are there some already metahuman heroes or villains that Chris is going to meet on that planet that could play something? And then that is where it left a lot of people just feeling like that was it, because it spent a lot of time lightly setting stuff up for that, finale, and it just kind of ended. It wasn't the biggest thing, but also knowing that there's not a season 3 and it's supposed to conclude and move in through other properties, it's like, well, you left a lot. You've got Checkmate out there, you've got Lex and Flag, you have what happens to Chris. There's a whole lot to explore. Is it going to take 5 movies for us to get all the answers? Because we know Supergirl is up next, and he said it's kind of a Guardians of the Galaxy type of movie. It's a space type of adventure with her, less on Earth, more in outer space. Could Supergirl end up meeting Chris on Salvation or helping there? Or do we not see anything until Man of Tomorrow and we get some answers there? So it just leaves it very ambiguous. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in these characters. So if you invested 2 seasons, plus you have Suicide Squad for, Peacemaker's character, we just don't know what the future holds for this character. And it's a little bit of we get, if you're going to integrate him into other movies and stuff, but you left a big cliffhanger of stuff where he is finally starting to get happy and accept his life and accept who he is. And then you just throw him in another dimension. It's like, okay. And that's it. That's all we have left.
Yeah. It's problematic, right? And it's got a lot of people feeling a certain way, which we're big proponents of. Let's see the whole picture, right? Well, let's see what they do with it, because I really want them to really have some, as people who have invested time into 2 seasons of a show, are big fans of the show like we are. Where does this go? Where are we going? Is it going to pivot more into movies? We don't know what's up really TV wise with DC, because they seem to be hyper focused on movies. We don't know too much about TV properties other than, we got Lanterns coming up, which we don't anticipate is going to deal with anything that's going on here. You got the potential Booster Gold series that probably isn't going to delve into it either. So they may be done with dealing with these characters on the TV side of it. And we got to wait for whatever they're going to do movie wise to kind of continue on with their story, which is a choice, I guess. But he didn't completely close the door on a 3rd season, but it seems like whatever in the next few years that could be explored with those characters is going to happen on the film side of things, which mixed bag, but we'll see what the stories that they tell are and how they're integrated into them. And hopefully we get some answers, because like you said, there's so much more they can explore here and we don't know where they're going with it. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
It's how does a Peacemaker character, because we know he was ultra violent, but he's trying to change himself. How does that play into something like Man of Tomorrow, Superman? He's kind of the complete opposite of what Superman tries to be in things. And, he's trying to change his character and who he is, but can he fully change that? He's kind of the Punisher-esque of DC here, of how he approaches. Not exactly, because Punisher's doing it out of loss and everything else, and he's just one that's... It's more about the ultra violence of how he handles things is very similar to the Punisher in that way. But there's so much with him and Harcourt and with Checkmate and with Argus and with Flag. And there's just so much to resolve. And if it's only going to happen in other properties for a while, that just feels like I would have rather it ended a little bit better, so that if we don't get much of a follow-up, that it's okay, because you left it in what in the world happens now? It feels like that's a season 3, but we're not going to same thing like Tron Ares. You set up like we're going into 4, and we're more than likely not going to get that. Yeah, we potentially could get Peacemaker season 3 down the line, but you don't know if that's
when or if
3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and we don't know how many films and TV shows and everything else that you might get them intertwined in before we get that, if he ever goes back to it. It's just, it did leave a little bit of it was fine, but it just left way too much up in the air for another season not to be happening.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of meat on the bone there, but overall, this season was fun. Like I enjoyed the heftiness, I enjoyed the heaviness of the stories. Where this is kind of like a yin and yang from season one, which is more in the humor. And there's plenty of humor in this season as well. Like there's a lot of that because we haven't even talked about John Economos's character in this. A lot is still this overly jaded, like just goofball genius character.
Does not know how to distract people at all.
Not at all, but there's some funniness with that. There's, Tim Meadows of SNL fame showing up as Langston Fleury, who's got bird blindness. But he's just this goofball, eccentric agent as well. And
bird blindness is a very serious issue.
It's a very serious thing. But you also have, Adrian's story in this where he's, dealing with it, and there's some very hilarious stuff with his home and his relationship with his mom and,
his secret room where he has all this stuff stashed in it.
That room is insane once you get to it, but also that, and then just the fine performance of Robert Patrick in this too, like as his dad, who is in this alternate dimension that's completely flipped on his head, and you get kind of this almost touching, heartwarming sentiment from him by the end of the season before what happens there happens. That I won't spoil. I want you to go watch it and see what happens, but he kind of has like a little bit of a full circle moment in here too, where it's just like, oh, this is the total antithesis reality of what we're living in, because his character was very much not redeemable in the universe that we were living in, and you were kind of cheering when he got his comeuppance in that because of how awful of a human being he was. But you get kind of the exact opposite of that in this universe, and it's just like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I get where he's coming from, and you kind of get that full circle moment. But yeah, like he gave a great performance in the limited time he was in this show too. And Leota is amazing. Danielle Brooks is an incredible actress too. It really shines bright in the scenes that she gets. Like, there's some really good performances in this season. Issues with the finale and the way they wrap up the story aside, it was really fun. It was a good story. You got a good mix of humor, a lot more heart and heaviness in it than we were anticipating, but the humor and the charm of it is still there as well.
Yeah, I want to show some love to Jennifer Holland with her Harcourt. She's because amazing. The first season, she's in a relationship. She's married to James Gunn and stuff, so you have a lot of people wondering, well, she's just got this role because, she's in a relationship with James and stuff, but she really showed in this season why she was the right choice for Harcourt, because she plays that hard character really well, but then you get to start to see the cracks and the emotion and the heart and her feelings while also still trying to still be the hardened person she is. And then you get the alternate version of her in that other dimension that is much softer and, carries herself a little different. And she really showed that she was the right choice for Harcourt in this season, that she was really, really good. And even John Cena got to show off a little bit more of, got the silly and goofy and over-the-top stuff, but got to try to show some emotion and heart and everything in there. But I wanted to show Jennifer Holland some love because she did great. Prove that she was the right choice for Harcourt, even though there's some fans out there that will probably still go on the attack as the internet does. She did a fantastic job this season.
Yeah, go touch some grass. She was phenomenal in the show. I enjoy her work in this. She's in other things too, guys. It's not just because she's married to James Gunn. Like, she's good in other stuff that she does too. Just, she is phenomenal as Harcourt, and I can't imagine anyone else playing her.
Yeah. So Peacemaker season 2 was a fun season overall. You got to see some more depth to these characters. You got to have more emotion. We got the retcon and everything to bring it into the DCEU, which I thought could have been done a different way and probably a better way other than just making the quick, immediate cut in the intro and stuff. But I thought it was a solid season, minus the issues with the finale and how it decided to end up. It didn't end in the most solid way because we don't know if we're ever going to see a season 3 and when we're going to see these characters again. I'm going to give it a solid 7 overall because it does have a few issues. I mean, it's only 8 episodes. They try to go through a lot of stuff, but it takes a little bit to fully build to where it was going to go, and especially that alternate universe, it took a while, which the payoff was fun, but to really think that Chris is that kind of non-observant to be in that alternate universe for long he was and not see everything that was going on. It's like it stretched it a little bit, but it was still a fun season overall.
Yeah, I'm landing a little bit ahead of that. I'm giving it a 7.5 again, much like I did with Good Fortune, but It's still a really solid story. You get to see them really expand upon themselves as characters in this season. You get to dive in a little bit more. They get a little more emotional depth. You get them really going through, just trying to grow as people, as humans, and find their place in the world. And like, I think they do a really good job of it. It does stretch it a little bit too long to get to that. I really wish they'd have gotten that next to last episode, maybe an episode or two ahead of it, because it does feel like it kind of lulls a little bit in the middle of the season and really picks up in the back half of the last couple episodes, which are phenomenal episodes. And for that I have to knock it a little bit because it does kind of lull a little bit in there. But if you're a fan of this, it's going to be violent and gory and just ultra violent, absurd, obscene, just fun humor.
Not for kids.
Definitely not a family show for sure, but that if you've seen the first season anyway. So it really dives into that in a much greater depth in this season. Like, I still enjoy season 1 overall more than I did season 2. Season 2 was a really solid follow-up. Issues with the finale aside and what it means for those characters moving forward with the rest of the DCEU at this point. But like, I still got a lot of enjoyment out of the season, and I want to go back and watch a couple of those episodes, especially the last two, because the last two were just outstanding television and really well done. Issues with how they ended the last few minutes of the episode aside, still a really solid season, and especially last couple episodes.
Yeah, and we didn't really even talk until we brought it up right here about how this is a TVMA. This goes out there, especially like early on. It really shows you, because there's a scene with Chris and drugs and alcohol and a bunch of other stuff going on in his house and stuff, that this is the follow-up to Superman. Like, he says that you don't have to see Peacemaker season 2 to understand the thing going on, but that's kind of where some of the problems lie within this, because it brings in Lex, it brings in the Justice Gang, it does set up Checkmate and Chris to have their stories continue and other properties. But if you don't watch season 2, you don't really know. And it does have some ties to Superman, which is a more family-friendly film.
Sure.
And you have this TVMA not family-friendly at all type of show. It is kind of questionable to do that, because if you are one that wants to have it all in, and if you're one that, well, your kids really loved Superman, and you know that the Justice Gang is going to be in Peacemaker, and you want to let them watch it, it does beg the question, like, why did you go so heavy after Superman with something that adult?
Right, and it's definitely an interesting follow-up. I get where he's saying where you don't have to have necessarily seen it, because he says they're going to explain the importance of like the Salvation Planet in the film. So they're going to dive a little bit deeper into that, which is where I think Peacemaker will come in, obviously, because he's there. If they're going to have it, he's going to have to, you can't not show him. But for us who are kind of completionists and like to know the full picture, like, it helps us. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like, this is more for your hardcore fan audience that maybe casuals don't necessarily need to see.
Yeah.
See it to see how it plays into it moving forward, because he's been pretty transparent about that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, Kimmy said it's not for kids. Don't watch it with your kids.
Right, and James Gunn has been pretty transparent about how all of this stuff works and ties in and everything, which, like I said, I appreciate. And, it's one of those, like, you don't feel like you need to watch it. You don't have to, but go watch this, especially if you've invested into season 1. You definitely want to see the follow-up in season 2, because it's a worthy follow-up to a really outstanding first season.
Yeah, and it's just getting curious to see how DC is going to play this, because they say they're trying their best, because they see that Marvel got themselves in a little bit of a mess. So you feel like you have to watch everything to know everything of how they have this interconnected DCEU without having to watch absolutely everything. Because like, what happens in Man of Tomorrow, if we see Lex with one of these doors, but we don't know how he went from the doors to, from his interdimensional portals to the doors without kind of that bridge within, Peacemaker here. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to fully have disconnected properties that are also connected and not have to watch everything. Because, I mean, if you watch Creature Commandos, you got to see, Rick Flag Sr. in there, and he was a hero in that, for the most part, a hero in that, but he also looked a little different. They had, Frank Grillo explained, I was doing another movie, during that time. I couldn't go gray and, white like I was in Creature Commandos, because they said, again, if you're voicing and playing the character in animation, you're playing it in live action too. So we've already got two connected but disconnected properties in that. And it's going to be interesting to see how, as they expand with Lanterns and Supergirl and, eventually when we get another Aquaman and Wonder Woman and all that, how they're going to keep them disconnected but connected.
Yeah, and that's the tangled web that James Gunn's going to have to weave. But all episodes of season 2 of Peacemaker are available on HBO Max. Yes, it is HBO Max still. Go check it out. Let us know if you've watched the season. Let us know what you think about it. We'd love to have that conversation with you and what it can mean for the bigger picture of the DCEU. Very excited to talk about that one. But I'm glad we explored that one. That one was a fun show to watch for sure. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.